yourself again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past.
Good evening and welcome to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith. It's Monday night, which means it's ladies' night, and I'm joined tonight by Holly and Alicia. Alicia is waiting for a package to arrive, so she will be joining us when that arrives. No Lily tonight, she is having a night off. But Holly, good evening.
Evening, Steve. How are you?
Very good, very good. I hope you've had a little bit of that sunshine that we've had in the northeast. It's been absolutely glorious today, and it's still shining now. So we better crack on with the show so we can get back out and get a few more rays. What a show, or what shows we've got lined up this week, because this is just going to be never ending, isn't it? The big news, of course, that dropped yesterday, which everybody seems to be talking about in the chat, is the proposed Super League. What was your thoughts when you heard that drop in the middle of the football yesterday?
I think, of course, I'm totally against it, but I do have mixed opinions in some areas, because I think that, of course, if this does end up happening, which it probably will at the moment, it's going to be absolutely awful for English football. It's totally going to ruin the game. But at the same time, in a certain way, I think the Premier League kind of deserve it, because for years now, all we've seen is them prioritising the top six. They don't care about their other 14 clubs, and they've always got their backs no matter what. I mean, you've seen with this whole takeover thing, the top six didn't want it to happen, so the Premier League did everything in their power to not make it happen. And I think it serves them a lesson that, because they've showed so much loyalty to those top six teams, they've shown absolutely none back. They've just thought, we've got a better opportunity, stuff you, and they've went off for a different league. So it just shows you how little respect they've got for the league. So I think that hopefully it can teach them a lesson to show equal respect to all 20 of their clubs, not just the top six favourites from now on. But of course, it is just a money-grabbing thing. But then again, that's what the Premier League's turned into. It is anti-competition. But it's the same with the Premier League. So I do have mixed opinions on it, but I don't want it to happen, because I think it's totally rubbish, especially since the 14 founding clubs can't be relegated. I mean, that's just a load of rubbish. You could finish with like hardly getting any wins, and then you'll still stay up just because you were a founding club. It's absolute rubbish. I don't get it at all. And it's just not fair. And I think the Premier League does need to take action against them, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, good evening, Alicia. Has your parcel arrived?
Sorry. Yes.
Good stuff, good stuff. Well, we're just talking about the Super League, and I think that's going to dominate tonight's chat, to be perfectly honest.
Okay.
What was your take when you heard that news drop yesterday?
It doesn't surprise me, being honest. I think this is the way football's been going for a long time. I mean, it really does, as one of, I think, was it UEFA's chairman said, it does spit in the face of fans. It's, you're expecting fans to, if they're still in at this point, watch Premier League games and then fly away to Barcelona and places like that during the week, every week. Yeah, that's not going to happen. That's not fair. But unfortunately, I think it's the way football seems to be heading.
Yeah, I mean, it's down to money, isn't it? It's money spoils everything. I mean, Richard Masters has called a meeting tomorrow with the other 14 teams. That's via Zoom, so it'll be interesting to see what comes from that. Darren Cowan asks, Solly, whether this Super League could work in Newcastle's favour. I mean, I've had quite a few messages today from supporters, some positive, some negative, saying, will this scupper Newcastle's proposed takeover? Will the Saudis be interested in coming to a league that, is diminished in size if that's what happens, if this goes through? I don't think it'll affect Newcastle's takeover at all. That's my view. I think that the Saudis are still sitting, waiting, ready to take over. I simply think with arbitration, we've got one of two things are going to happen. We're either going to win the arbitration case and the takeover is going to go through very quickly, or we'll lose the arbitration case and then legal action will see Newcastle's takeover go through at a later date. I think it's as simple as that. That's why I'm confident. People saying I'm really confident. I seem to be more confident now than I ever have been. I think I am, because it's down to Nick DeMarco now, really. And if the Premier League decide that the takeover is going to go through, then that's it. It'll go through arbitration's won, and it'll happen quite quickly. I just think it's a case of when, not if now, and that's why I'm being quite positive. But do you think this Super League will work in Newcastle's favour, Holly?
I think it has a chance to have a positive impact because I think now the Premier League's got a lot more bigger worries on their plate than Newcastle's takeover. So I think it would make sense for them to just approve that deal so then they can worry about this whole Super League thing, because that's obviously going to have a much bigger effect than Newcastle's takeover. And also, would they want to approve it more? Because if the top six are taken out of the equation, then there's not going to be as many powerful clubs in the league. And if we got that takeover, it would make us the most powerful and put a lot more money into the league where it would have been lost. But I certainly don't think it'll have a damaging effect to the takeover, because as far as I'm concerned, I think the Saudis will still want to have the club. And I don't think that even the people in the top six clubs really want to leave. I mean, you've seen Jurgen Klopp today, who wasn't happy about it at all. So I don't think that people are in favour of the Super League.
Yeah, Darren's backed up his question by saying, what I mean by favour is EPL may need the Saudi cash if they kick out the greedy six. I mean, yeah, maybe it does seem a better proposition having the Saudis in, if that is the case. I mean, the meeting tomorrow will be a big meeting because by all accounts, the top six, the greedy six as they're getting called, they've actually already signed agreements. Now, that's taken it a step further, and surely there must be something in the Premier League to suggest that if this happens, there needs to be some kind of punishment meted out, and they could get booted out of the league. Who knows?
Yeah, I think the Premier League definitely need to take action, and I think the government will want them to as well, because Boris Johnson doesn't seem to be happy about it. I think that either need to have a heavy amount of points deducted or relegate them. I mean, that would be hilarious if you've seen the top six teams in the Championship. And of course, there's been the idea discussed of banning them from playing international football for England and stuff, which is harsh, especially since we've got the Euros coming up, because I know a lot of people won't want to see that happen because a lot of our best players do play for the top six sides. But honestly, I think go for it, because the Americans now, these people that are investing in English football are getting away with far too much. They're taking the game from England, from the English people, and they're turning it into what they want. They have no regard for what the fans want. And they just think, oh, yes, it's totally realistic for someone who supports Liverpool and lives in Merseyside to travel to Barcelona on a random Wednesday night. It's not. It's rubbish. It's ridiculous. And they need to realise that. And that's the whole American idea of not getting relegated. That's never how English football's being played, and it shouldn't be like that. So if they don't like the rules, don't invest in English football and just stay out of it.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen this before, Alicia. We've seen these kind of things happen before. I remember darts. It's probably you two are probably too young for this, but the PDC as it is now was set up by taking all the best darts players away. They all basically left the darts organisation, the BDO, and set up the PDC. And Eric Bristow, John Lowe, who were the main names at the time, Jockey Wilson, all left and went to play, and it was all about TV money. I think it was cricket. Cricket's another one where we can point to, Super Leagues being, created in maybe India or something like that, and top players going, and then being, they have that threat of not being able to play for their country. So, people who think this can't happen in football will have a bit of a wake up call, because it's happened in other sports, and money talks. It doesn't talk; it swears.
Yeah, it's completely down to money. That is it. That football is this now. It's down to money. Whoever has the biggest input money-wise, it goes to them. And, the big six or the top six, even though half of them aren't even in the top six, which is ironic, get to choose what they want to do, because they have the wider fan base. They have more of a worldwide fan base. No matter what they do, people will buy shirts across the world. People who aren't in England don't kind of understand it. It's like I was watching before, and the Americans are really finding it difficult to grasp why we're quite annoyed about it, because the NFL and things like that work in the same way. So I think it's quite a Premier League problem that we've never seen anything like this before. Now, in terms of the takeover, I don't want to read too much into it, but I feel like it could swing our favour a little bit, because I think his name's Oliver Dowden.
That's correct. Yeah, the sports minister. Yeah,
sports minister made a statement before, basically wanting to go through with his independent regulators, and that could really benefit us, because we've kind of erred on the side of, we know these top six didn't want us getting involved, and if it's going to be independent regulators coming in and looking through the whole football pyramid, I think there's a lot that's going to come out about this. And I think Richard Marston's might be sweating a little bit about that as well. That might be another problem for him, but it's just to do with money. It's what it comes down to. And unfortunately, that's the way it is. And, the irony of Manchester United having that banner on the seats of like football's nothing without fans, yet you go and do that. It is awful. And one club coming out saying they knew there was going to be a backlash, but weren't really bothered about the PR. Like, they're not bothered about fans. Like, we're just customers to them. It's just all money.
Yeah, well, at least Newcastle aren't involved yet.
Yeah.
And looking at our prospective owners tweet today was quite positive as well. Mayor Dad, of course, part of PCP, Amanda Staveley's husband, putting out, that this was wrong, and joining the protests like all the other fans, Alicia.
Yeah, I think this is what I love about them. They understand what it means, and people have this kind of perception that they don't understand what it is and they're just going to come in and just chuck money at the league and not understand Newcastle United. But this is what I keep going to. They keep coming back to us. They want us. They understand the passion of the city. They understand the project that could happen here. And they understand us as a club and as a fan base. And they know what it means. They can see what they've done wrong here. And as much money as they could love to be involved in something like that. No relegation, have as much money coming in as you want. They don't. They want what's best for the fans to actually go out there and enjoy their team playing football.
Yeah, Jeff White, touching on what Holly said, wonder how Kane will feel giving up his England place. Even the fans of these six are against it. Maybe he'll ask for a transfer to Newcastle. I mean, Harry Kane is not going to be happy, Alicia, is he? If he is at a club where obviously they've just sacked their manager today as well. Who would have thought Jose Mourinho would be sacked before Steve Bruce? Well, yeah, we've got a situation here where if this does happen, and this is the threat that these players can't play international football anymore, it's going to be a merry-go-round of transfers, isn't it?
I think it's a kind of power move to push the players to kind of stand up to the chairman more of. That's why I think it might not go through, because I think all these players are going to be like, hold on a minute, I'm not giving up playing for my international team. I'm not giving up the Euros, the World Cups, all of that. And then they're turning around saying they're going to make their own one up. But see how they get on with that. But I don't think Mourinho was sacked for the reasons that they're coming out and saying. I believe it does have something to do with this. I couldn't see Mourinho kind of rolling over to a European Super League. He's a competitive manager. He wants to go out and win things. And I'd take him at Newcastle, the little magpie that he is. I'd love him to come if he wants to.
Interesting. Any reason why? I mean, is he just because of his past track record? I mean, his recent record hasn't been that great, but I suppose it's the connection with Sir Bobby Robson, and he has been quite complimentary about Newcastle every time he's come.
Yeah, I think this is the point where at this point in the club, if the takeover goes through, we need somebody that understands. Like, the prospective owners already get it. They've already been tweeting about all the things that have been happening, but we need to carry that through. And Mourinho would, down on the ground, understand what this club means. He was under Sir Bobby Robson for years. He gets it. And maybe he is past his best, but we know managers have really struggled at Tottenham. They've had some world-class players, but they've never been able to tip them to win that trophy. Pochettino got them a European final and they still couldn't do it. I mean, fair play to a brilliant Liverpool side, but they are still in a cup final this weekend. It just seems very bizarre to me. Why would you sack a manager before a cup final? I mean, I don't know. I'd still happily take him. Maybe I'm just kind of living in fantasy land of Mourinho winning trebles and things like that, and Porto and.
Yeah, I mean, Holly, would you take Jose if it was an option? Would you like to see him at St James's Park in the managers dugout?
It wouldn't be my first choice under new owners, but yes, I would take him. I do actually like Jose Mourinho, and exactly what Alicia said, I think that he'd be someone that understands Newcastle as a club and a city, and I think that he'd really try his best for the club and want to go out there and win things. And I think he does really, really care for the club. And of course, he had those Bobby Robson connections, which is always nice, rather than just bringing in someone that has never really heard of Newcastle much before, or they've heard of them, but they don't really know kind of the history of the club. I think Jose Mourinho would be a good choice.
I mean, I've often said, and I think I've said it on the show, I think after he had that incident at Chelsea with the physio or the doctor, the female, who was working on the coaching staff or whatever. I remember having that blazing row on the touchline, and it was embarrassing. And he had to come out and he had to apologise, and and I don't think he did. And I think she ended up getting sacked, and whatever transpired from that. I don't think he's really recovered from that. I think we saw a change in his attitude with the media. Gone were the days of being the media darling. He became a little bit more. It was almost as if the mask had slipped, and I don't think he's recovered from that. And of course, he went to Manchester United, and I think everybody expected him to be a huge success at Man United. It was talked about for many, many years about him going there, but he followed in, what was it, Moyes and Van Gaal's footsteps, and didn't really do anything major, and it became a massive, two relative failures for him on his CV. So maybe Newcastle would be different. Maybe Newcastle would be different, Holly.
I'd like to think so. I think that the pressure of being the manager of Newcastle is a lot different to what it is being Man United or Spurs manager. I think the expectations are different, and the job that he's being asked to do is completely different. Because we'd want him to be kind of building us back up to the heights we were once hitting from kind of at the bottom, really. It's like we want someone to completely strip us back to the basics and then rebuild a whole new club, because really there's no structure at this club now that I would want to continue us going forward with. We need to completely renew everything. So we need a manager that can build us up. And I think Mourinho, with his experience, would be good for that, because it's not like at Man United and Spurs, we're not asking him to go out there and start winning stuff straight away. I don't think that would be the ambition. So I think Mourinho might be quite open to that job, because it's something a little bit different from what he's had for the past few years.
Yeah, I would agree with you 100%. David Reid asks a question. I'll ask you, Holly, and then Alicia. Should the Premier League expel any English club in this flawed venture? I mean, if it does go ahead, would you like to see them expelled from the Premier League?
Yes, because I think that it hasn't been the Premier League for 20 clubs. It's been, like I said before, it's just been the 6, and they've had far too much say. They have a stupid amount of control in English football, and it needs to stop now. Enough's enough, and they really need to get hit where it hurts and get punished, because they cannot go on the way they are, because they're going to end up killing the game for everybody. They're just so selfish, and something needs to happen. Otherwise, I dread to think what will happen in 10 years' time. There'll be no clubs left. It'll just be the top 6, and no one else will get any type of care from any of the leagues or anything.
Same question to you, Alicia.
Yeah, I go along with the point somebody made before. Relegate the 6 of them, all the 6 in automatic promotion spaces up in the Championship, bring them up. It's disappointing, because you want to see us bring the best players to the Premier League, and the only way you can do that is through money. I don't have a problem with money in football when financial fair play is in use and it is equal. But I think in the past few years, it has become unequal. It is being swayed to the top 6. We proved that. We warned everybody that the top 6 sways this league to their narrative, to what they want. And it's disappointing, because, you enjoy watching them have all these great players and playing this tiki-taka football and all of that. But the power plays, it's ridiculous. Like, just because you've got a bit of money behind you doesn't mean you get to dictate what everybody else has to do. And fair play to the Premier League actually coming out and commenting on stuff straight away, which they don't normally do. Coming out and actually hosting a meeting with the other clubs that are left and go, what do you want to do? Because really, they've stabbed the rest of us in the back by doing this. They've stabbed the rest of the football pyramid in the back, because the money filters down. They're the top 6 that have the most money. They filter down to grassroots. If they leave, where's your money for grassroots then? So, yeah, chuck them into the Championship. You know what it is? Chuck them National League, if they're going to do that. I'd go that far.
They'd be playing my team, Dunstan.
Hopefully they beat them. That would be great. But yeah, honestly, like, I don't know if it's just like a raw reaction, but this isn't what English football is. It's not what I grew up watching. When I was young, it was like Abramovich had just come into Chelsea, and then Man City got took over. So it's all this new money, and that's not what football was, and it's disappointing. But I'd get them gone, chuck them out. We might get a top 10 finish. So
we might do, yeah. We might still get one now the way we're playing. I'll give you this one from Life Goals on Twitter, Alicia. He says, I have a question. I'd love it answered if you're happy to do so, the panel. He says, do you think Spurs being so against the Newcastle takeover now becomes more clear? He says, they really have no place amongst elite sides. He says, their last European trophy was 1961 and they've never won the Premier League. So it's a great question from Life Goals. Obviously, he's one of our regular panel people in the chat. What's your take on that? Because Spurs have been one of those main objectors to the Saudis.
Yeah, I fully believe they've seen us as a threat to their hopes. They were just starting to get there, and then we come in and they'll be going, hold on, we've worked so hard for this. No, we can't do that. They're going to knock us off our place. And they have a lot to do with the NFL, so I can see where they've got that American structure from as well. I think it suits Tottenham down to the ground. You know, they haven't won anything. They're just preying on the money to take them there, and it's not what you want to see, because I don't believe Tottenham have worked for it. They've felt lucky with good players that have come through the academies, and they've got some decent players, but they haven't really worked on a project. They've sacked managers far too easily. I think sacking Pochettino was very, very harsh, and they've become this. You can see by the way they act, one thing goes wrong and they think they've got the right over everything, when they never give managers time, I believe. And I think they seen us as a threat out of everybody because they were the club that was building at the time. Man United aren't going to see us as a threat. I don't think they care about anybody else. City, again, money. Chelsea, Liverpool, they've all got the money. I don't know why Arsenal are really in there. If someone could explain that as well. I don't get Arsenal and Tottenham being in there, but yeah, I think it definitely becomes clear what Tottenham we're up to, let's just say.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. Yeah, Tottenham, Holly, completely against Newcastle's takeover.
Yeah, there were, and I think most of those clubs would have been as well. I don't think it would have been just Tottenham, but it just fits their agenda because they were threatened by the idea of Newcastle tapping into that top 6 big elite clubs, and I think we would have, absolutely undoubt. I mean, there's no reason why we couldn't have absolutely wiped those out of the water, like just totally gone bigger than them, because I think the foundations we have are bigger than any of those clubs if they didn't have the money. Then when you make us the richest club in the world with the Saudi money, we just go to a whole new level. Because when you think about it, the support that we've had for years watching absolute rubbish is unreal, and it's up there with those sides. And then if we started being absolutely world class, then you couldn't even imagine what heights we'd reach as a fan base. So of course they would have been threatened. But this is the thing, is it's the European Super League is anti-competition, but so has the Premier League been for years now. And this is what we need to change, because most of the time it is those clubs that are at the top. You get an odd anomaly where it's like a Leicester or a West Ham this season, or a Wolves we seen a couple of years ago. But I think eventually there'll be no anomalies. It'll be just constantly those 6 clubs. If it carries on the way it is, there's no room for newbies anymore. And they could see that Newcastle was going to threaten that, so they didn't want it to happen. And that's what we need to change now, because it's healthy to have new kids on the block. We need to make room for new people. It's boring when it's just constantly the same clubs challenging and winning things.
Yeah, of course it is. Yeah, could be a positive. Yeah, we'll have to wait and see what happens. David Crowe makes a good point. He says, do you think it'll devalue Newcastle as a club based on what the league will look like after the greedy 6 leave? I mean, you know, does it devalue it, or does it make it does it make it more of an attractive proposition to a new buyer?
I'm looking at it in a more positive light, and I think that it'll be more attractive to a new buyer, because I think if you take the top 6 out of the equation, even now, I think Newcastle will probably be one of the biggest clubs out of the 14, if not the biggest. And of course, yes, I'm biased, so I can't really give a neutral perspective on that. But yeah, I think that we would be. So I think that any owner in the Saudis would jump at the chance to own us, because they realise how much potential we've got to reach new heights.
Same question to you, Alicia, from David. Does it make it more of an attractive option, do you think?
I think it does, because we would, as much as I want to win things, of course I want to win things, but do we then become the Man City where we just run it and then there's nobody, you know what I mean? Where
Yeah, it becomes like the
everybody else
Scottish League.
like kind of, well, until Rangers were kind of like what Celtic were doing just year after year, and then the league was just a rest. I wouldn't want to become that. I want to still be able to compete with these teams around us. I want to be entertained. I feel like I would get bored if, as much as I would want to win trophies, I would get bored if we were just running away like 20 points ahead every season. So I hope that if they do leave, if we get this takeover, that we treat it more as a project and don't just go out and spend ridiculous amounts of money, which I don't think we would get away with anyway. I think financial fair play will be ramped up at that point. But I hope it becomes more attractive, and I hope other clubs become put up on that pedestal as well, because I think we've got a few decent teams in there. You know, West Ham have been shouting to be sold for years, and they've done a really good job. They deserve brilliant owners, because I know West Ham fans are kind of in the same situation as us. They don't get on with their owners, so I would like to see teams like that come and compete with us. If we're going to be the out and out, if the takeover went through, get the other teams, like, the spotlight on them, and let all them teams get on with it.
Well, I've got some breaking news, and it is the Colin, Cuthbert, Clyde, Cecil, Curly and Wiggles have agreed to establish a new Caterpillar Super League with 3 more Caterpillars expecting to join. So it's all happening tonight. Yeah, that's been funny, hasn't it? Watching all of that go on. Thanks to Julie. Thanks to Julie for sharing that one on Twitter. Very funny. John Priest says, Super League is not on. I'm a Liverpool supporter. My second team is Newcastle. How are the lads? So a Liverpool fan, not happy with it. John says, I think tomorrow's Premier League sanctions will shock a lot of people with their severity. We'll wait and see. Colin says, it's quite ironic that the Premier League are meeting with the 14 other clubs when not so long ago back the Premier League met with the so-called Big Six to discuss our takeover. It stinks. Let's talk a little bit about the takeover, Holly. It's been in everybody's Twitter sphere this week, and over the weekend, and things have been in the paper about various things. Zubair inboxed me on Twitter today asking about the Inter Milan story once again raising its head. I've tried to tell everybody that's just a rehashed story. It's nothing new, but yeah, a lot of chatter. Does it get you excited? Are you still feeling that you'll not be able to really get into it until you see Amanda on the pitch holding the scarf?
So when it was first happening, like over a year ago now, because it was just at the start of lockdown, it was ridiculous. I was convinced it was happening. I think most people were, and it was ridiculous how addicted to my phone I was. It was like ridiculous. I was just checking every 5 seconds, and I don't know how something can appear in 5 seconds, but I was convinced that it would. And then obviously it got called off, and I was like, right, that's it. But then we got the announcement from Mike Ashley where it was going to arbitration, and I was like 50-50. But now I'm about 80% positive that it will happen. I think that it genuinely will. I think we deserve it. And I think after this long fighting across all of lockdown, it would be just a lovely ending to it all. But I try not to get too excited till it is something official, because it's never ended well in the past. Although I'm always that fan that gets one bit of news and is straight jumping on it, getting overexcited. And I know that I'm about to embarrass myself, but I do it anyway.
Alicia, are you more confident now, or are you still the same, or are you less confident? How are you feeling?
I always get a bit giddy about and get a bit overexcited. I have to calm myself down. But it was a year ago. It was like an unhealthy obsession with Twitter and checking companies' house and things like that when new companies were getting made for this takeover and everything. I do still believe it. I feel like we wouldn't be hearing from them as much if they weren't bothered. Mike Ashley wouldn't be spending money on a league battle if he didn't have to. We know what he's like. We know how tight he is. He ain't going to spend money if he doesn't have to. So I want to believe it. I feel like the Premier League are on the brink of being found out if this investigation happens that Oliver Dowden was on about, because he kind of hinted that it was in the pipeline. And I think that came up through the Newcastle takeover, that we wanted an independent board brought in. And I think this is about to uncover a lot of things that are happening in English football, which would massively help us if the things we've alluded to with the top 6 meeting would help us to prove there is nothing wrong in it. The owners and directors test clearly wasn't fit for purpose in the first place, because they've just gone and stabbed the Premier League in the back. So
great point.
No,
great point, well made. I agree with you 100%. Yeah, it's embarrassing, this, massively embarrassing for the Premier League, and hopefully for us, it's going to make our takeover hopes and prayers. Hopefully they'll be answered sooner rather than later. But we will, of course, watch with interest. As always, we've got to thank our sponsors, and we're halfway through the show. Big shout out, as always, to Spider VPN, who've been with us for the last 3 months for your internet security. Just search Spider VPN on Google and they come up. And also a big shout out to Arcot Interiors. And for all your kitchen needs, visit arcotinteriors.com. Give them a ring on 0191 265 8663 or email inquiries@arcot.org.uk. Some fantastic options there. Visit their website. Also, a big shout out to qtechshop.co.uk, the makers of pool tables and snooker tables in Wallsend, and Jab Signature as well. Their new range is coming out very soon. He makes all of our posters and flyers. If you're a first-time visitor to the channel, just click on the Newcastle Legends logo down in the bottom right-hand corner, and that's it. You can subscribe, set a reminder for your shows that you enjoy watching. Hit the thumbs up underneath the video just to like the video, and that helps us. And click share it to your social media, and drop on the comment section. And there's always plenty of great people in there. Just under 300 people watching us live tonight. So just join the community. Some great people in there. Some regulars as well, who've often chipped in as well on the 5-minute rant. We're also on iTunes and Spotify. Every show gets loaded onto there after the show. So if you're out walking your dog or just out for a nice walk in the sunshine, get yourself on there. You can find out a little bit more about us on there and listen to it. It gives you a different concept when you listen to it on a podcast. It's a little bit different. Let's talk football. And there it is. What a moment that was, Holly. Somebody actually inboxed us and said on Match Day Live, wow, Steve, that was real passion, the way you celebrated that winner. And it was because I didn't have the responsibility, of course, of running the show. Chris had kindly offered to run the show for us. So I'm sitting there, and you get caught up in the moment because you're a fan, and it was great. He says, I've never seen you celebrate like that. And I was going, yes, it's because I didn't have the responsibility. But yeah, great. It was a great game. It had everything, didn't it? It had goals. We predicted goals beforehand. It had sending off. It had penalty, had VAR incidents, and of course it had a wonderful winner for Newcastle. But a great game in the grand scheme of things, and a big 3 points for Newcastle.
Massive 3 points, and I think those will be the 3 points that now make us not have to worry about relegation anymore, because I do believe that was safe. And when we were 2-0 up, I think everyone was buzzing, and then we got to that 2-2, and I dread to think what my face looked like then, because I was not hiding my emotions whatsoever. I was absolutely fuming. I was just fed up. I was like, oh my God. Because I know people were like, oh, we would have settled for a point and stuff, but I was like, no, we can't just keep settling for points. If we want to start climbing the league and being more positive, we can't just settle for these points, especially when we're winning 2-0. It's just not on. And then Willock scored that goal, and it was just brilliant. I mean, why he's not playing every week baffles me, because Steve Bruce should have him in ahead of Shelby every week. He comes off the bench all the time and makes an impact. He scored the past 2 times, and that goal was just brilliant. I'm so happy for him, and I'd love to see us keep him at the end of the season. I mean, I was literally welling up when he scored that goal, because it meant so much, because I just thought, right, that's a job done now. We should be safe. And then obviously I know the other night when Fulham were winning, then I was like, oh God, but thankfully they equalised, so now we're still looking pretty good with 8 points clear.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? I mean, we were all saying, I feel that's it, we're safe now. But then we all watched Arsenal play Fulham, and we're like, when Fulham went 1-up, I was like, oh God, and you're back to working it all out and going, well, then they go, yeah, it's just a nightmare, isn't it? It's never ending until you know you're 100% safe. You keep worrying.
You do, yeah. So I'll be very happy when we're mathematically safe. And thankfully, it probably won't go to the last game of the season because that would have been torture. But until it's all sorted, I think we'll be constantly looking over our shoulders now. But I can't see Fulham winning many more games.
Alicia, you do your own live show on your channel. I mean, it was a proper roller coaster, wasn't it, at the weekend?
Well, I had to rewatch it because I was at work this week, so I might just stop watching because we seem to win when I don't watch. So,
you're a jinx.
I see. You know what it is? We were 2-0 up, and I was on my dinner break, so I got to see half an hour from the second half off, and it went to 2-1, and I went, even before them, we were 2-0. I started watching, I was like, we're not going to keep a hold of this. I don't think we played great. We should be looking more comfortable when we're 2-0 up. And I feel like we just kind of started getting a bit lackadaisical about things. I think we really need to keep the focus when we're 2-0 up. And I could see it coming. And it was 2-1. By the time I got downstairs, it was back to 2-2. I was like, there you go. It didn't surprise me whatsoever. But a brilliant win. I wasn't expecting it. I thought we were going to get battered off West Ham, go for the Champions League spaces, but we were brilliant in the end. Just an all-round good performance. Even though we dropped off, we managed to still get the 3 points, which I can kind of praise them for. Willock, brilliant again, coming off the bench. I don't know if you kind of save him as that super sub, but I would like to see him playing more. I'm kind of torn because I want him to stay, and the only way he's going to stay is if you play him all the time. But he is a brilliant plan B if things aren't going well, which we don't seem to really have. So I think it's a bit of a good thing to have. But since, Alan St. Maximin, the pace on that kid, I noticed Almiron was getting some pace behind his shots now as well, which I've been kind of crying out for, because he just kind of used to tap them. So hopefully we'll see him getting a few more goals. But I hope to see Callum Wilson kind of getting into it a bit more now as well. But 3 points is 3 points. I'm going to take it.
Yeah, I'm laughing at some of these suggestions. JJ saying Liverpool versus Barca midweek, then Liverpool versus Dunstan on Saturday. Lots of suggestions like that coming in. Tom Lynch is saying, Dunstan playing league games against Liverpool, Man City and Man U. Classic. It really could be the case. You never know. We'll see what Richard Masters cooks up tomorrow. He always cooks up something you don't expect anyway. That's for certain. What do you think's changed, Alicia? We've talked about it a little bit last week, but, that's another win. And, a lot of people, there were still some doom mongers on Twitter about the performance, not happy about this, not happy about that. We've just beaten West Ham 3-2, who are chasing the Champions League position. Shouldn't we just enjoy the moment? For me, that was my philosophy. But what do you think's changed? I mean, for me, it's Richie. I've had this conversation a million times in the last 7 days, but Richie's been the catalyst.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. A lot of people have disagreed about that. A lot of people don't like Richie. But I think he has been the catalyst in this change. For me, he should be captain. He understands this club. He gets a performance. Ever since he's been back in that team, Joe Linton's been brilliant. I mean, we haven't seen performances from him. He looks like he's enjoying playing, which we haven't seen. He looks, when the parts that I've seen, he was switching, he looked more comfortable. And I don't know if he's kind of given the players that attitude of, we go out there, we play for this team. I don't want anybody because at times Joe Linton looks lazy, I'm going to be honest. He wanders about. I don't think you can do that when you've got Matt Ritchie screaming at you. We just see him. There's a fight come out of nowhere, and I said that the first game we won when he come back in, and I fully believe that was because of Matt Ritchie. I would give him the captain's armband. I don't understand the captaincy at Newcastle United, how it works. Lascelles had a great leadership in the Championship, fell apart a bit in the Premier League, and I think he needs some time off from that because it's a big weight on shoulders, and I feel like he could progress more without the captain's armband and focus on his play. Jonjo Shelvey shouldn't have vice captaincy. he doesn't shout. I never hear him. When we used to be at the football, I was kind of at the front, 3 rows from the front. I could hear Richie screaming from the other side of the pitch. I'm being deadly serious. All I could hear all game was him or Dubravka. I would give it to them too. But I honestly think it's down to Richie. Richie's been a massive boost, and Dubravka coming back in, I feel, gives us a bit more stability.
Yeah, interesting. Dubravka as well, Holly. He's come in. We talked about it on the show about Dubravka, Darlow, but Dubravka's come back in. He's been superb. No question. He's back to his best. Got over his injury and back to his best. Joe Linton, he's a revelation compared to what he was. I don't think I could ever say he was brilliant, but I would say ultimately he is playing with a smile on his face. The system is almost back to Rafa's system, wing backs, and using players who can play in those positions, and 3 centre halves, and it's Rafa's system, and that's when Steve Bruce essentially gets his best results, when he goes back to the previous manager's formation.
Well, I think it was the same when he first joined the club, and of course we did okay last season when we finished 13th, but most of the season we did play with Rafa's system. Hence why I think we managed to do okay. And then Steve Bruce tried to do it his way this season, which wasn't very good. And then
the gloves were off.
Yeah, the gloves are off. Now he's put them back on, and we're back to Rafa's way, and we're getting results. So just keep doing it. Instead of being arrogant and thinking, I'm Bruce, I'm going to do what I want, just do what gets you results. It doesn't matter, especially when we're in this relegation scrap. And I think that's what he's realised now. So he's put his arrogance to one side and just thought, right, we're going to try and do this. But yeah, I do think that Matt Ritchie and Martin Dubravka's had a big part to play in the recent form.
Yeah, I mean, Sean Longstaff as well. I mean, he's come in. He's managed to get some games under his belt. I keep pointing to the fact that he's had a bad injury. We talked about it on Match Day Live. I still feel that's the reason that Longstaff's taken a while to get back into the swing of things. But I think even he's managed to, get back to somewhere near his best form in the last couple of games.
Yeah, I was a big fan of Sean when he broke into the squad under Rafa Benitez, and I think that goal against Burnley, we just thought, wow, I think he had so much potential, and I was like, right, this is going to be the midfield going forward. We don't need to invest in the midfield, and then he got that injury and it all kind of fell apart, didn't it? And of course, going from Rafa Benitez as your manager, bringing you through the ranks into the first team, then going to Steve Bruce would have been a bit of a shock to the system, and I think that would have had an impact as well. But thankfully, he seems to be getting a bit better. I don't think he's as good as he was when he first broke in the 18-19 season, but he's starting to get better. And if he keeps improving, he's still very young. So I think that he could have a long way to improve and maybe get back to those heights and be a big part of our midfield going forward, because our midfield's been very much lacking this season. I think that's where we struggled most on the pitch.
Yeah, I would agree. Midfield's a big problem. I think I said yesterday, when I was doing the 5-minute rant with Pete and Chris, that I'd love to see Maddison from Leicester. I think he's a cracking player. I know Pete's a big supporter of Grealish. And this is if the takeover goes through. They're the kind of players you'd love to see come in. We need somebody dynamic. But if we're still without a takeover going into the new season, I guess the question I'm going to ask you is: would you spend 20 million on Willock?
I would spend the 20 million on Willock, definitely. I know that it's quite a big price tag, but considering we forked out more for the likes of Joe Linton in the past, then it's not going to hurt paying 20 million for Joe Willock. And I think the fact that he's 19, if I'm right, is a massive plus, because having that much talent at 19 years old just shows how much of a good player he's going to be, and I think he is going to be one of the best, and probably an international as well going forward. So I would definitely say the 20 million's worth it at this point in his life.
Yeah, would you sign Willock, Alicia?
I would. I'd take the chance on it. We took the chance on a £40 million Joe Linton, which as of yet hasn't worked out. I still wanted to work out for the lad. Everybody compares him. It's not his fault. The price tag wasn't his fault, and I don't think you can blame price tags on players. But £20 million for Joe Willock, I'd take the chance, because when he's been on the pitch, he's been brilliant. I cannot fault him. Maybe he could pass a little bit low. instead of just running in a straight line sometimes. But we can work on that.
We can, yeah.
He's a young kid, and as long as we don't just sign him, improve him a bit, and then sell him for like double the price in a couple of years, which we like to do, I would like to nurture a player like him and actually see him be part of the spine of this team and create a spine of the team, because I feel like we haven't had one for a long time, like a solid, reliable players that you can rely on week in, week out. I feel like we almost kind of chop and change. But yeah, I would love to sign him. People are saying it's too much, but that's how much it is now.
Yeah, some nice comments coming in about the panel. Baker Boy says, has anyone else noticed since the change of the ladies' night panel, the Toon have been winning? He says he hopes he hasn't jinxed us. Life Goals says, this show has really blossomed in the last few weeks. It's definitely one of the most interesting and articulate Newcastle United shows online. What do you think about that, girls?
Lovely comments, appreciate all the support, and yeah, I think it's been nice different perspective, I suppose, and yeah, just hopefully it keeps going, and hopefully it is the truth that we've started getting better results since then, and I hope that continues for the rest of the season.
Fingers crossed, yeah. We'll hang on to anything, won't we, when Newcastle are winning. Yano says, Stephen the ladies, did anyone notice on the build-up to the penalty decision, the long throw was a foul throw? Both these feet were on the pitch. I've got to be honest, I didn't, but you're tied with the camera angles. Did either of you notice that? I didn't.
I didn't.
No, good point though. Gary Douglas says Richie is one of the players that should have never been dropped from the team. I would agree with you on that. Life Goals says Richie would run through an oak door for the club. He's a key personality. And Colin, getting back to Joe Linton, says Joe Linton is not lazy. He is not confident or unfortunately good enough, which, you know, a lot of people will always have that opinion. You know, £40 million for him is a lot of money, and he certainly hasn't repaid his transfer fee. You are wrong. The catalyst for this run is the absence of Lascelles, says I know he's one of those who isn't a Lascelles fan. David Crone is on his way to the bookies as we speak. He says Joe Linton golden boot next season. Keith Roll says Joe Linton's on a goal scoring run at St James's Park. 2 goals in 2 home games. He is on fire. Yeah, lots of comedians on tonight. You're all right though. I mean, look, you've got to be excited. Joe Linton is certainly in the form of his life at the minute, so fair play to him. Yano's comment about Lascelles, Alicia, I'll come to you on that one. I mean, you know, you mentioned it already, but he was a great captain in the Championship. You were right what you said, but he has struggled a bit in the Premier League. However, I would say that Brighton game when we lost 3-0. You know, we'd lost both games 3-0 this season, but that second game, there was talk of Lascelles having it out with the players in the dressing room again. And since then, we've been on a bit of a run. And he did get a couple of crucial goals as well before his injury. So he's led from the front again. And I've got to be honest, I'm the same as you. Martin, who does a lot of the shows with us, he often says he's not my captain. That's his copyright. But Lascelles, he splits fans' opinions, doesn't he?
Yeah, I want him to do well because he captained us through kind of the good times that we had, and you want to kind of the progress we made with Rafa. He was a main part of that. I'm going to say something a lot of people probably aren't going to like, because I know a lot of people like Fernandes, a lot of people rate Fernandes, a lot of people are happy he's getting a new deal. I am the equivalent of the Lascelles debate with Fernandes. I feel Lascelles was better partnered with Lejeune, personally. I feel like since Lejeune's gone on loan, he hasn't looked as stable in that back 4 or back 5, whatever we tend to play. Something's gone out of his game, and I'm glad that he came out and gave the players a kick up after that 3-0 Brighton. But it shouldn't have to get to that point. As a captain, you should be foreseeing these things happening, foreseeing these changes in the dressing room, and not letting it get to that point where you have to hit rock bottom to come back. I know sometimes you have to hit rock bottom to come back up, but it shouldn't get to that point. And I think that's what he needs, a bit more experience in that way. A good, solid captain can see that coming. And I feel like that's what Richie has. Richie can see it coming. You see it in performances where we start to drop off and Richie will start screaming at people. He needs that. But I think Lejeune being there, if he comes back, would help him. I know a lot of people are going to hate that because a lot of people like Fernandes.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, I mean, Lejeune, of course, couldn't come back. It was a season-long loan, but will be interesting to see, whether Newcastle decide to keep him on. Holly, your thoughts on Lascelles?
I'm on the same page as Martin, who's on the show. I really am anti Lascelles, to be honest. Like, I don't think he deserves captain. I don't even think he deserves a place in the team. I don't rate him as a defender. I don't rate him as a captain. I just get rid. Like, I'm sorry, that might be a bit dramatic, but no, I'm not a fan of his. And I think that, yes, he does deserve a bit of credit for having words at the Brighton game, but isn't that just the bare minimum as a captain? He hasn't done his job now all season, and what he's had one rant and everyone's like praising him to the high heavens. No, that's literally his job. That's what he should be doing.
I didn't like it when he went when they had Pizzagate, when they had they went out for a pizza up to the posh end of Toon, and Lascelles came out with some positivity about Mike Ashley. I didn't like that, and I thought that was completely misjudged. Somebody who's had a good relationship with the supporters suddenly, is praising the owner who we all wanted out of the club.
Yeah, that didn't go down well. I don't think he's ever had the best relationship with the fans. In the Championship, yes, but after that, I don't think he's been really engaged with the fans that much. I don't think he's like a captain. You'd kind of want to be really involved with the fans, but I don't get that feeling from Jamal Lascelles. And I think that it's time to move on now. I would give the armband to Richie, but the only bit of praise that I will give Lascelles is the 2 vital goals that he scored just before he got injured, because I think that was massive from him. Big respect for that, because he really did step up and got us those points when we really needed them. But going forward, I just don't think he's the right person, and I would give it over to Matt Ritchie now, because I think he's much better suited to the captain's job.
Yeah, I think a lot of people feel Matt Ritchie's a good captain without the armband. I mean, there's a bit. I know the Chronicle's gone into some kind of, depth tonight with what he was shouting when Willock scored the goal. Do you know what I mean? And why on earth they made a huge article about him shouting Willie, I'll never know. But this is what they did, and then said that he was shouting, some obscenities to the rest of the team to try and cajole them into, sticking to it and sticking to their job. But yeah, listen. We all know it. We've been talking about it on this show for months now. Get him back in, and that's why I've been praising Steve Bruce, because he's put right the wrong that he had in the dressing room. We know he fell out with these people, and he's put it right. Fair play to him for doing that. Graham Jones has come in. Maybe he's been a big help on the coaching side of things. Whatever's happened is happened, and it's benefited the team. We're virtually mathematically safe, which is great. Bede asks a question. He says, Stephen, the girls, moving forward, would you stick with the back 5? And would you change any personnel for the Liverpool game? Liverpool away. We'll look ahead to that now for the last 5 or 6 minutes. We'll play them on Saturday, 12:30 kickoff at Anfield. Of course, we know it's not a happy hunting ground. The live coverage for this one is provided by BT Sports. Far too early for any team news, but yeah, come to you first, Holly. What would you change? What would you do? Are we going to go and park the bus, do you think?
Probably, because I think that's kind of what we always tend to do against those elite sides. We don't really like to go all out, because we will get thrashed at the end of the day because we aren't actually good enough. But I would stick with 5 at the back, because I think that's been working. There's no reason to change it. I would take Shelby off and bring Joe Willock into the team. And I probably would leave Callum Wilson on the bench, to be honest, and leave Joe Linton in, because I think he did okay. And I also think that Callum Wilson really isn't ready yet. By the past couple of games where he came on as a sub, I don't think he looks to be himself. So I'd probably just bring him on for 20 minutes or so just to get a bit of fitness. But apart from that, I'd just stick with the same side. I do think that there's a chance we could get something, just because I think the whole upset of the European Super League might have their heads all over the place. So that might give us a bit of an advantage. So we could get something potentially then. I'm not expecting anything, but you never know. Anything to go in our favour, we'll take.
I just wish we'd played them a few weeks ago. I really do. Colin's saying, Ollie, you're not expecting a 4-3 then?
No, not at all.
Same to you then, Alicia. What are you expecting out of our journey to Anfield?
I think it's going to be very interesting. Obviously, I don't know if the team news is out for tonight's game, because I don't think they'll be until 8 o'clock. But Jurgen Klopp seems very against this European Super League idea. So it'll be interesting to see if he actually plays what we would see as a starting 11. Would he bring the kids in? I mean, if he wants to do that against us, go for it. I mean, probably still beat us. But it could play a part, because if, these managers start wanting to make a point that they're against this and want to start chucking games, that's what they're going to do. So it'll be interesting if he does play the starting 11, which is more likely. I think it's going to be 3-1 Liverpool.
3-1 Liverpool. Okay,
Yeah.
What about you, Holly?
I'll go for a 0-0.
Oh, wow. 0-0. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I mean, look, we've got plenty of time. We'll see what happens. And when we come to do Match Day Live next Saturday, Holly, I'm sure we'll have a bit more of an idea. Dano was just saying, if the takeover goes through, a lot of people asking about the takeover. People seem to be more confident about it at the minute. How many players do you think you would need, Holly? He reckons 8.
Probably a minimum of 5, I would say, because I think we do need at least a couple of midfielders, probably a backup striker, and maybe a couple of defenders. So I'd say a minimum of 5, but probably between 5 and 10 players you'd be looking at. We need quite a few.
Okay. Same question to you, Alicia. I mean, would you make wholesale changes? Would you say 5 is a minimum, but 8 is
Yeah.
suggestion?
I wouldn't want to change too much, because I keep going to this fact I don't want to be that team that comes in and just chucks money at it. I really do like Almiron. And sometimes we never seem to get the best out of him, but I want that to happen. I want him to come good. I think Wilson would be all right. Obviously, Alan St. Maximin, Dubravka. I'd keep Richie for the value of it being Richie, and then kind of go from there. But I wouldn't want to change too much, because then sometimes you lose that dynamic, because then you're waiting for a full team to gel, and then it can set you off on a bad start. So, but I'd take a few signings. We're not used to it.
Yeah, true. Just looking ahead to the Arsenal game as well, which of course follows on the heels of the Liverpool game, but they're going to be stuck right in the middle of their semi-final. The Europa, and we could just be playing Arsenal at the right time, Holly, which would be nice. And having watched them yesterday against Fulham, they're not a team that frightens me, especially at St James's Park.
They're not. I think a lot of people will be expecting us to get a result out of that. Well, not expecting us to, but I think that they'll think there's a good chance of us getting a result. But I hate playing Arsenal, to be honest. It's one of the top six sides that I just like. I always feel like so panicky when we play them, because I just think like they can always pull something out of the bag. I mean, when we played them away last year, I think it finished 4-1, and they weren't particularly great, but they still put 4 past us. So I don't like playing them personally, but I can understand why people think we'll get something.
Yeah, Arsenal, as I say, just been playing them at the right time, Alicia, I think.
Yeah, they weren't great. I mean, they just managed to salvage a point in the 97th minute the other day.
Yeah.
But they always turn up for us for some reason. That FA Cup game where we played really well, and they just ended up barring in the extra time. Like, it is typical. It creates a problem if the Europa League gets suspended, because I think they're looking at cancelling the Champions League. Because then that chucks their midweek game out and have more time to prepare. But if they're still playing that, if their focus is on that game, we could get something. I'd hope to get something, just because now I really want us to go out and beat these top 6 teams. I'm really bitter about it. So I'm going to go for a 1-1. I'll be fair about it.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens over the next couple of weeks. The clock has beaten us again, ladies. Been an absolute pleasure having you on. Big thank you to everybody in the chat, as always. Plenty of topics coming from you. I'm back tomorrow night, 6 o'clock, as usual, on a Tuesday night with Liam Kennedy from the Shields Gazette. Wednesday night, we have the pleasure of everyone's company. Stu Penman, Neil Mitchell, George Mitchell, Steve Hasty and Steve Wilkinson join me as we look back against Newcastle games against Derby County. Some interesting memories, I'm sure, will be shared then. And then back again on Thursday night, again at 6 o'clock till 7, when I'll have had my first COVID jab by the way, with Gibbo and Supermax. So looking forward to seeing the guys. Plenty coming up, and looking forward to seeing you all tomorrow night. But girls, thanks a lot. Absolute pleasure to have you on. See you next Monday. Take care.
Night.
Bye.
Critics attack. It feels like I've been talking to myself again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn.